and welcome to our client community and our peace of mind members. The talk today is about letters of guidance and how important they can be and how they can be a crucial part of your estate plan. If you have questions, feel free to submit them via writing in the Q&A function in Zoom, or if you're watching this as a recording, you can enter as a comment. So why don't we dive right in? I'm going to introduce this idea, but as I mentioned, I'm excited because I'm going to learn as we do this, because I think it's really about parents and how they can communicate with their kids. And so, Dad, this is going to be a lot of fun and very interesting and meaningful for me as well. So, the subject is letters of guidance and really ensuring that your family knows your hopes and your dreams. So much of estate planning, it seems like it's about the next generation and preserving assets. But what about you? What about me? Making sure that everything we work for not just is protected for the next generation, but that you get great care, that your future is really well covered. And we hear this all the time. Are you concerned about your future needs? Are you concerned that you're going to get the right type of life and future that you want as your needs increase? Does this keep you up at night? Do you have sleepless nights? Do you feel overwhelmed about this? And that's what this is about. We're here to help. I like to say this a lot. Hope is not a strategy, and control we can control. Don't hope that everything just works out. Don't hope that your kids are just going to do exactly what you would have wanted, especially as you get more cognitively limited or you lose the ability to communicate as well as maybe you can now. Hope that everything just works out is not a strategy. And this is about controlling what you can control. We can't control everything. We can't control care costs necessarily. Can't control what medical needs we're going to have. But there's a lot that we can control. And that's the focus of both estate planning and on letters of guidance that we're talking about here today. We're going to reference this quite a bit, but Mike authored an article about this in Trusts and Estates magazine, also wealthmanagement.com. And it's called How Will Your Clients' Families Know What They Want? And this was written kind of for attorneys because it's a magazine that's geared towards attorneys. But you don't have to be an attorney to read this article. So if you want, especially peace of mind members, email us. We're going to send a copy of this out to everybody. It's also featured on our website at gilfix.com. So this is an article, it's an overview about this. But just to say, Michael Gilfix is a national authority on this issue. And we try to be thought leaders here. So I'm really excited, again, for Mike to walk us through this and really the focus of what these letters can be and how they work. And I am here to learn along with you. So again, if you have questions, feel free to enter them in the Q&A function or as a comment if you're watching a recording. And so I think a key issue here, just as we introduce this, is estate planning is more than just legal documents, right? I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in the right formalities and the right structure. But it's also about you and your needs. There's a lot more to planning than simply protecting assets and minimizing taxes. How can you be sure that your needs are addressed and heard, that your dreams, your hopes are addressed and heard, even as you become more limited and as your needs increase? So that's what this is about. And this is for educational purposes. It's not legal advice. This is really just to empower you with some new tools that we think can be really useful as part of your plan. And I think it's more than just legal planning. As Mike's going to touch on, this can be about sharing a lot more than just specific needs and issues. So why don't we jump in?
So let's commence.
Yes, go for
I'm
it,
eager.
Mike.
I want to get into this.
Yeah.
This slide, this is more than legal documents. That's why when folks ask me what do I do, most attorneys who are in this field, they say, well, I do estate planning, I do trusts. We never say that. I mean, what we do is we take care of families. Trusts are essential. Powers of attorney are essential. All these legal documents full of legalese, very important. They empower family members or other trusted individuals to take care of financial affairs, tax planning, et cetera. But again, the bottom line is that's not what it's about. It's about our quality of lives. It isn't just about our kids. They're going to be okay. We hope, but we want to take care of ourselves as well. So that's kind of the motivation, just realizing that as we've urged, again, parents with kids with special needs to do this. What about me? So it took years for me to really come to this realization that I'm an individual too. There could be a time when I'm not able to communicate my needs and make all of the right choices that would be consistent with my values and the things to which I aspire. So that's kind of the genesis of all of this. You might call it selfish. I think it's selfless because our family members want to know what we want. They do. They don't have to guess and, oh, gee, would this be good or would this not? There's going to be a lot of that going on. But let's get into it now. First, the value of communication is what we're really talking about here. We have to acknowledge, I do, we have to acknowledge that there could come a time when we will have diminished capacity, when our memories won't be as good as we'd like them to be, when we're not able to make right choices because we can't understand the pros and cons of implications of a decision. So, once you start to accept that, we kind of have a choice. We could just be passive and let things happen and hope for the best. But as
Hope
Mark
is not
said,
a strategy.
hope is not the best strategy. So we can take control here, and we're not going to mandate things so much as give guidance. The more questionable our cognition, the more we need help, the more important this kind of thing is. And I think once you start to think about it, it's self-evident, but you got to have that insight. You have to accept limitations. You have to accept reality. And we deal in reality. We deal in reality. So before getting into some of the more into some details and issues that I think that I've addressed and that I think each of us should address, let's take a moment and just talk about the value of being really creative as we think about these things, particularly with some of the new technologies that we have available to us. We can use videos. We can take videos. We can identify videos of family events, maybe a hiking trip, some backpacking trips for me where we've done some videotaping would be awesome. I think Mark knows I would love to see that if I was ever bedridden and couldn't get out somewhere. Photos of me running with the dog. I mean, what is it that you value? Is it when you're sailing, when you're playing golf, when you're shooting baskets? I mean, what
And
is
actually, so are you talking here about stories that you would record that for you to watch later or that family members record? So if you have limited memories or if your memory is not as good, these are videos and stories that you would read about yourself or see about yourself. Is that what you're talking about here?
Yeah, it's replaying some
I
family
like that.
events in which I was an integral part, or
Yeah.
Myra, your mom, my wife, just seeing her in videos and also in real life, but certainly in videos. And storytelling. Again, my wife Myra participated in a storytelling
Yeah.
exercise where
So below, yeah,
published two volumes.
she did Storyworth. And so I just literally, we're not saying these are the best services. I literally just Googled ways to tell your story. These were three that came up: Storyworth, Storykeeper, A Life Untold. There are more and more tools emerging that are designed to make this as easy as possible. If you want to write Storyworth, my mom did this, and I've actually been reading her memoirs, and they send, I think, a series of questions and like cues for you to respond to. Others are more verbally based, others are video based. With AI tools now, I think it's going to be pretty amazing what you can do with storytelling. So this is not a complete list, but just saying you don't have to do it yourself. You can use a third party. They're pretty inexpensive that can help you organize and get these. And I love that idea. That's great.
So a lot of
We
the
got to get this going for
storytelling
you, Dad.
a lot of the storytelling is kind of presumptively for your family members, but the point we're making here is telling some of those stories and having them available for retelling.
Yep.
That can work, and that can be a great thing. And it's when somebody suffers from Alzheimer's, we say so often, you got to laugh. I mean, you got to laugh because some of the stuff that can happen is pretty funny. If somebody if you have a parent, a spouse, a loved one who suffers from advanced dementia, and they're repeating the same thing or they're forgetting, it's very tempting to get frustrated and correct them and try to get them back to reality. Another whole approach says, you go with it. And if the same story is told a few times, so what? And if you tell the same story and it gets your loved one to laugh, even though you told it 3 times yesterday, so what?
Yeah.
So we go with the flow. We think about quality of life here, not being correct, but it is an opportunity.
And
I've
actually,
seen
just along those lines, Dad, I know I remember I don't remember where I read it, but there was something I read from some expert because as people get older, and I do this too. I'm in that realm. I think my wife accuses me of this all the time. We like to tell stories, and often you forget who you told the story to. This is whether or not you have memory issues. We all forget who we told a story to, right? So we sometimes retell the same stories. And it was a great point that someone, maybe a psychologist, was saying if you hear a loved one or a friend telling the same story, you don't need to stop them because they're getting joy from it, right? They're reliving those moments. So unless you don't have time for it, whatever, you want to hear new stories, let people retell those stories. I think that's so poignant, Dad, that especially if you have dementia or severe memory issues, let's enjoy those moments. And it also reminds me of the documentaries where they show people with really advanced stages of dementia where they can barely communicate at all, but they play music from their childhood or from their early adulthood, and all of a sudden they light up. And so I think we can reframe stories, even if, again, they're not telling exactly the right way or repeating it, as a chance to kind of brighten their moment, brighten their day, and give them a moment to relive these incredible memories and these incredible stories in their life. I love that,
Let's
Dad.
let's let's
That's
take a
great.
second on music. Um,
Yeah.
Short-term memory can fade, but memories of music that you knew as a kid, years ago, for Peace of Mind members, a subset of our clients, we have about 450 members in that program, but anybody can learn from this point. We did an event, we did a sing-along for members of the program. A sing-along. It wasn't about the law, it was just a get-together social, and a number of people came, and one lady was brought in her wheelchair, seemingly completely without capacity. I mean, she just sort of sat there, her head was off to the side, nothing much. And one of the songs that we purposely chose music that went way back. One of the songs that we chose for the sing-along was How Much Is That Doggy in the Window? How much is that doggy in the window? It goes back like the 30s or whatever. Okay. So we're singing that along, and as we're singing it, this lady, there's a point in that song where you literally bark. You bark, or, "Oh, oh," right? And son of a gun, she barks. It like the first words from her in weeks, and then she started singing along with that song. After it was over, she went back to being pretty non-communicative. But what a wonderful moment that was. I think it was your granddaughter who brought her. So again, it kind of makes the point, what can help us relive some quality of life? What can give us some joy? Music is always there. So in my advance directive, I'll give a hint, because we're going to talk about some specifics in a moment here. I'm very clear about some of the music that I like and I want played in my room if I can't communicate. And I made it very clear. There's a lot of music I want. No rap music
That's
is to
not your
happen in
thing.
my room.
That's
I've
okay.
tried.
I wasn't planning on playing hardcore hip hop for you, Dad, but that's extra
Ooh,
clear for you. And just to be
yes.
clear, Mike mentioned his advance directive, and that can contain some wishes around this, but we're talking about, you can include this in your advance directive, which, excuse me, covers healthcare, but this is also about adding to that, having this letter of guidance that could expand on that, and give a lot more information about your
Yeah, and the
experience.
beauty, by the way, this is not meant to be inconsistent. In fact, it's very important that it's not inconsistent with any estate planning documents that you might someday write. And I think in the article, I make the point that if in your letter of guidance you're tempted to say something about why you left less money to a kid, that's not what this is for. I mean, that can actually create issues and problems. This is meant to be very positive. Again, what's quality of life for you? um, and one of the beauties of a letter of guidance is you can update it as often as you like.
You don't
With
need
your
a
advance
lawyer.
directive, that's a legal, it's a document, and you have to get it notarized or witnessed again, and it's a hassle and it's a cost. This is something you are writing for your family members. A number of our clients have, in the special needs context, they've given us copies of the letters that they've written, and we keep them handy, and we've learned from them as well, by the way. But again, we're going to go back and talk more about us. So let me go through some of the issues that I suggest you think about, where you would maybe want to give your thoughts about what you would like if some of these issues were to ever come up. First of all, where do you want to live? And if you think that's a simple question, boy, do we have news for you.
Yeah.
What if you need help? Can you live safely alone? Are you too far from transportation hubs and you can't drive anymore? Is it safe? What if the level of need for you becomes so great that you have to have somebody with you? Is that okay? Most people say, yeah, I want to be at home. But what if you need 24/7 care where the cost is $300,000, $400,000 a year? And that cost is only going to go up. Hey, cost is a factor here. We can't just have blind eyes and say, I want XYZ done. I want to be cared for at home with 2 caregivers. Well, do you really have the money for that? Government benefits are not adequate to cover these things. So do you want to be at home? What are the quality considerations for that? if you have a spouse who may need a high level of care, you got to think kind of respectfully for that person, because he or she may not be able to communicate anymore. But again, living at home suggests a value of independence, a value of being in a familiar environment. But what if those things become unsafe? Is there a point where you would even say, it's better for me, maybe it's better for my spouse, my caregiver, if I'm not at home, because I'm destroying quality of life for my spouse? And I've heard a number of people say, I don't want to do that. It's a selfless kind of thing, but it ultimately is, I think it's very consistent with your own perception of quality of life. Talked a little bit about entertainment already.
Well, I think that's actually pretty important. I think that's so. I know you did, but like, what? Give some examples. Are you talking about like just music, movies? Like, what? Expand on that a little bit.
Well, I think it's up to the individual. There's some of us who are not so good with some of the multimedia systems and don't really know how to use them. That's me. So
Yes,
good
that is me.
old-fashioned video. It's really the entertainment that would capture you. I think it really goes back to what's given you joy consistently. Are there family jokes that should be told and retold and maybe recorded so you can play them again? Yeah, there's no rocket science here. There's no one way of doing it. We're individuals. So what gives you joy? Are there favorite television shows? I certainly have some of the old ones that I just
Yeah.
can't stop laughing at. And a couple of them aren't sufficiently woke these days to be on the air, but they're funny. I like them. So again, there's no particular list. Maybe I'll come up with that list as we go
You want
forward.
to know it? I need to know this.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Food and the senses. What kind of food do you want? We can get on health kicks, and our medical team can put us on health kicks, but let's assume just for the moment that my dementia is progressing and I have very terrible cholesterol. I love cherry pie. By God, I want cherry pie. So if it shortens my life, I don't care. I mean, what are the foods or the drinks that give me life? That give me a little bit of joy. And alcohol is now, it's not even a little drop of alcohol is good for us. But maybe that's something that's important
Or
to you. I don't care for it, but scotch is a big deal to a lot of people. Again, no prescription here. It's what do you think makes sense?
read about the use of cannabis for people with dementia, and
Yeah.
actually, it's the research is not clear, but maybe that's something that you might want to consider. As long as it's legal and your family can do it, it would get them in trouble. I think that's fine to include.
Yeah. Now, hey, edibles can lift the mood. Um, yeah, some personal experience here. It's legal. It can be fun. You got to find the right thing. Some people get depressed from it, distant, and all of that. But again, what's right for you? Other items, and here my thinking about this other items idea is: are there again videos that you might have come up periodically on a screen in your room? Um, what people should I'm sorry, this is getting more into the not just items, but what I think is really important is that to identify the people you'd want to visit you. We mention this typically in the advanced directives, where my advanced directive says if I'm in the hospital, I want you, my agent, the person responsible for my quality of care, I want you to bring my family members and my friends to visit me. When somebody's ill in a hospital or a nursing home, it isn't usually viewed as the most fun place to go. And a lot of people are resistant to going into those types of facilities to visit someone. They are. It's just human nature. Lots of reasons why that might be the case. But to me, it's very important that my family members and friends visit me. And I'd want to make that very clear. I'd want to, in my letter of guidance, in what I have so far, I don't have this. So take notes, Mark.
I'm learning.
Visit, be there, hang out, tell stories, just sit, watch something with me, sing with me. Myra would be incomparably wonderful, my wife, at this kind of thing. And what could be better than that? Her coming and singing and telling old stories and looking at photo albums, things like that. So that's in the items, yet it's really what's going to make sense for you, for me. Okay. Charitable political. Why do I include this? Many of us think a lot about what our money is for, and we think about our values. Years ago, I wrote another article that I thought everybody would think was the greatest thing ever. frankly, it got pretty much ignored. It was about the value, it's akin to this, of writing what's called an ethical will. And this is a will that doesn't have any legal, it's not legally binding, but where you say, look, these are the values in my life that are important. Charity, supporting your religion, supporting your focus group, whatever it may be. If these are issues or values that you want to convey and pass along to the next generation, you need to be explicit about that. Don't make them try to figure it out, because two different kids are going to have two different perceptions of what your values are in a particular context.
And
So
would this relate to if you're incapacitated? I would like you, my kids or trustees, to continue to donate to these causes, or is it
that,
also about, is it both that and after I'm gone, I hope you continue to support these causes?
it is all of that. It is all of that. That, these are the things that are important to me. And I think in the article, I made the point that it was a real story from a client where she said something like she left money to the kids, but she also said in her document that this is just my wish, is not a mandate. My wish is that each of you would make a modest donation every year to the following organizations or to pursue particular causes. Not a mandate, because that can create issues in managing the trust and all of that, but a suggestion. We do have values, each of us. If you think about it, and we should think about it, What's important to me? What's in my culture or in my community or in my religious group or my cultural heritage? What is it that's important to me, that's given me value and that I think is important enough to pass along to the next generation? But that's the perfect kind of thing. In the classic ethical will, by the way, the first one was developed, oh my God, centuries ago by a rabbi living somewhere in Russia. And it's been adopted by every religion, the concept. At the outset, they were Bible-based. Virtually all of them would refer to some element of the Old Testament or the New Testament, and they would go from there. And it can be that, of course it can be that, but it doesn't have to be that. Your ethics are very personal to you. Maybe they're religion-based, maybe they're not. Again, we are individuals, and this is not a generic exercise. This is very selfish, and I think selfless, because our family members want to know.
We have a question. Does that have to be like notarized? Does it have to be like an ethical will? If you're doing this guidance about your values and whatnot, does that have to be notarized? Does it have to be legally done?
No, I mean, not at all. Yeah, I guess you could if you wanted to make sure everybody knew it was valid, but this is so personal. Any family members or really, really, really close friends who would read this, they would know that this is real. They would know. So no, I wouldn't deal with the formalities of it. That would take it to a different level. My worry about that, by the way, is if you did say something in there that, about the value of keeping the home for the kids, if that wasn't consistent with your estate plan, I have this, with all these lawyers out there suing people, I'd worry that somebody would grab that statement and say that's an effective amendment to the trust. So we steer clear of the formalities, steer clear of anything that could intrude on the integrity of your estate plan.
That's actually really interesting. That's kind of an argument to keep this sort of informal, because you don't want to inadvertently create the potential for a lawsuit against your estate or from one beneficiary against another by inadvertently throwing in a line that you didn't know had an unintended consequence. So I think keeping these more high level and a little bit less specific is probably better. That's what I'm getting from you.
And I would say to keep it positive. One of the worries is you maybe left one kid a very little amount of money, period. And that's fine. You can do as you please in your trust. But then if in your statement you say, I want you to know that I did this because you borrowed money in the year 2010, you didn't pay it back, and you were in an accident, whatever. If you have those details, that kid could read that and start to quibble, say that, look, that's based on a misunderstanding. And then the door is open to litigation. And there's so much litigation in this world. God.
There is. Now, on the flip side, I think we do generally recommend, though, communicating with your family somewhat. If you are leaving an imbalanced bequest where some kids get more than others, I think at a high level, it is good to give some high level explanations for why, to avoid fighting. It's that fine line, right? You don't want to put too much detail.
This is making, maybe the most important overarching point. Communicate to the greatest extent possible. Communication with your family and with your kids about your wishes. if you have a vision for any real property you own, let them know what your wish is. If you've made particular assets going to a particular kid, let all the kids know why you did that. So there's not, I always say, if there's going to be any disparity or any issues there, make sure they get pissed off at you, not at each other. And if you don't
Yes.
raise it in advance, they could start
Yes.
blaming each other. And you don't want to leave a legacy of unhappiness or fighting or arguing among your kids. So,
Well, they say
taking responsibility for our own wishes and our own planning.
daylight is the best disinfectant. Shine a light on those issues ahead of time so they don't fester and cause issues later.
And if there
So,
are issues, you address them. You talk about them.
so I think
Easy to
just to
say,
remind,
huh? Easy to
yeah,
say.
no, absolutely. So I've learned so much from you here, Dad. This is great because I learned from these types of talks. It's important for you and I to communicate about this and within our family. But I hope everyone here watching got a lot about this. And just as a reminder, we're here to help. If Peace of Mind members, if you have questions about this, you can use your annual Peace of Mind meeting, if you are a member of our Peace of Mind program, to discuss this. It doesn't have to be about updates to your trust or changes to your financial situation or protecting your property from massive increases in property taxes. It can be about this. We can help be your thought partner and help guide you as you craft your letter of guidance, or how you might work in these stories or these videos into your, not your estate plan, but into kind of your hopes and dreams plan. Because I think they're parallel things. You have your estate plan, the formalities of it, but I'd almost like to call this your hopes and dreams and values plan. And they definitely interact with each other, but they are separate things in many ways. We can't put all of your hopes and dreams into your trust. That could undermine the integrity of it, just as we cannot put specific bequests in your hopes and dreams plans. But I think this letter of guidance idea is great. Or do you have thoughts there?
Your hopes and dreams evolve. Your hopes and dreams
Absolutely.
when you're 40 are very different than when you're 60 or 70 or 80. I mean, your reality is so different. So that's why we emphasize, I mean, these are evolving documents. It's also such a good exercise. It's a good exercise for each of us. If you have to write something down, you have to think about it. You have to think about
Yeah. Yeah.
it.
Writing things down. So we're going to take just a couple questions. So feel free to submit any other questions. This, again, what I love about talks like this is we're both hopefully giving you some valuable tools and educating, but I'm learning. This is all stuff that I want to learn from you, Dad, and Mom, as we get into these stages where hopefully we aren't going to need letters of guidance. Hopefully you'll be able to communicate your needs and your wishes for yourself forever until the day you're gone. But again, as you like to say, we deal in reality. And as we both like to say, hope is not a strategy. So I think just to recap what I've learned here today is that there's kind of two concepts that we talked about here today. One is a letter of guidance that talks about your hopes and dreams for your own care. And that includes where do you want to live, what type of situation do you want to be in, the types of foods, the entertainment that you have, all sorts of things that are personal to you. But there's also this issue of what you want for your family. And that's kind of the more ethical will type of thing. So there's kind of two parts to this. And I'd also add a third part, stories that you might record that can be played back for you, or stories that your family can record that can be played back for you. So your letter of guidance can talk about all three of these things, about your own wishes, the types of stories you want played back for you, but also your ethical goals and your dreams for the values that you want to stay alive in your family. So I'm learning every day from you about this, Dad, and I'm glad we're talking about this. But I think the main question that we got was about the formality of this. And again, it's this fine line. That's maybe where it can be helpful. You want it to be as specific as you can. Maybe not, although your hopes and dreams might change. So don't get too specific. Like the TV shows you like now might not be the ones you like in 5 years. But the general guidance can be good. And we do have to be careful that it doesn't undermine your estate plan. As Mike said, if you're leaving less to one kid and more to another, that would be kind of connected to the letter of guidance, but don't give too many specific reasons that address specific dollar amounts why. That could be used kind of against your estate. But you can generally say, hey, look, I did this because you are on a much more prosperous financial path and you're not, or you have bigger needs. However you want to explain that, I think that's a really good thing. So we talked about a lot of issues that kind of intersect, but at the core, this is about the general idea that estate planning is not just legal documents. It's not just protecting assets and minimizing taxes. It's about your hopes and your dreams. And how can we ensure that your plan is integrated in a way where you have all these pieces sort of covered. It doesn't have to be done with us as your attorney. It can be done relatively informally. And maybe there's an argument to keep it more informal so you can change it more easily so it doesn't interact in a negative way with your estate plan. But any thoughts you have, Mike, about if you're watching this, what are some key next steps you'd recommend that people take right away while they're thinking about this?
I think you should sit down right now and write that letter and just put down, if you come up with 2 points, that's massive. Just,
Yeah.
I see getting started, it's not writer's block. We all have some of that, but inertia is our enemy. So yeah, I just say, while it's top of mind, spend a little time on it. And this is meant to be thought provoking. We don't have there's no strict guidelines here.
So
So
yeah,
think about it. Think about what you'd want your family members and loved ones and caregivers to know, and do it right now.
yes. So for those of you watching, whether it's live, thank you, our Peace of Mind members, or if you're watching this as a recording, take some moments right now. Take 10 minutes after you finish this and just start writing out a letter of guidance. And let's start with those key questions. If you can't make decisions for yourself, where do you ideally want to be living? What types of great food do you want? And what types of entertainment do you want to have in your room? Let's just start with that. And then you can expand from there. There's no right or wrong answer here. It doesn't have to be super long. It doesn't have to be perfectly organized. It's just something that can communicate what you would want to your kids or your caregivers or whoever it is that's going to be stepping in for you. Let's start from there. And if you do want to set a meeting with us to talk about that or any other updates to your estate plan, of course, reach out to us at gilfix.com. If you're watching this as a recording, leave a comment or questions that you might have about this. Feel free to share this with anyone who could benefit from this, or maybe share it with your parents or someone in your circle who you want to hear from. And this is great, Dad. You got to get this letter of guidance to me. I need to see your letter of guidance. Have you done it? Updated it recently?
I've written an ethical will.
Okay, I need to know where
I'm
this
not
is.
sure you've seen it. So
I don't know that I have, but I'm sure it's changed. If you looked at Mike's writings from when he was a college student in the early 70s, I think it would be very different from what he would write today. He was a little bit more righteous and a little bit more extremist in his early 70s views. So thank you so much for joining us here today. Again, comment, share, like this. Thank you so much for being a part of our Peace of Mind program for members. And stay tuned for more talks coming up. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.